It's big, and it's expensive, but if you want to play everything on 4K Ultra, this may be the card to get. What's going on? Welcome to Tech with Sean, and today we're taking a look at the Gigabyte Gaming OC RTX 4090. I ordered this at 6 AM on launch day from Newegg, and honestly, it was the only card available for me to buy, but really, I may have chosen this one, if for no other reason than the silver metal backplate, because most of my PC is white and silver inside, and almost all of the other 4090s are just black. But what exactly does a card like the Gaming OC get you for your $100 compared to the cheaper Founders Edition? First off, you get a bigger heatsink and a third fan. This model uses a vapor chamber and 3 110mm fans to keep things cool. They're RGB fans, but they only light up when they're actively spinning. And since this card has a 0 RPM mode, that means that when it's idling, it's not really going to light up very much unless you set a custom fan curve in Afterburner or something so that they spin all the time. Another feature this has is a dual BIOS switch, and that lets you toggle between an OC and a quiet BIOS. Not only is the switch handy for giving you some control between performance and noise, but in the future, if you ever corrupt your VBIOS or flash a VBIOS on there where it bricks the card, you can revert back to the other BIOS and use that to get up and running to reflash a good BIOS on the one that's messed up. This card only ships with a meager factory overclock over the FE, so if that's the only reason you're looking at it, I would not pay the extra charge just for the overclock. It's really a tiny difference, and basically all these cards have headroom for much better manual overclocking, so I would not pay extra for just a factory overclock. So basically the bigger heatsink, the extra fan, and the dual BIOS switch are the features that you're paying for the $100 over the Founders Edition. This card uses a new 16-pin power connector, and I'm using a 12-volt high power cable straight to the PSU. The power supply I'm using is the MSI A1000G PCIe 5. With this Gaming OC card, you can move the power slider and Afterburner over to 133% for overclocking, but all the games I show today will be run at the default out-of-the-box settings. Using a new power supply with the 12-volt high power cable is going to save you from having to use the adapter included in the box, and that one uses 4 8-pin PCIe power connectors. Also included in the box is a metal anti-sag bracket, which I went to the trouble of painting to match my build, only to end up reusing my existing ARGB support bracket. But if you do want to paint it to match your build, it came out really well, and I didn't need to sand it or prime it or anything like that. Noise-wise, this Gaming OC card is not too bad. I think that big heatsink does a pretty good job, and in a lot of lighter games, the fans really don't even spin most of the time. To be clear, I'm not in a noise-controlled environment, and my PC has 6 case fans and a power supply in it, so that's not scientific, that's just, my opinion. It does not have the terrible coil whine that the Gigabyte 3070 OC that I tried though, so it has that going for it. Size-wise, this thing is a 13.5-inch monster, so make sure your case can accommodate it. I installed this in a Corsair 4000D Airflow, and there is only about 1 inch of clearance left between the GPU and the front fans. It's also thicker than a Snicker, or 2 Snickers stacked on top of each other for that matter, basically taking up 4 whole slots. This card feels heavy because of the large heatsink. The backplate is metal and is also used to help dissipate heat. The rest of the shroud's build is plastic, and while I think an all-metal shroud would have felt more premium, I also think that would have made the card heavier, so it's kind of a trade-off. On the backside, it has a 2-slot bracket, even though it's functionally a 4-slot card. It has 4 video outputs, 1 HDMI 2.1 and 3 DisplayPort 1.4 ports. DisplayPort 2.0 would have been nice to have, but as far as I know, there are no monitors or GPUs on the market that support it yet. A second HDMI 2.1 or a USB-C out would have been appreciated though. I'm running this on an Alder Lake 12700K and DDR4, and now that the 13th gen is out, I feel like maybe it's not the best system to do comparisons to other cards with, but let's jump into some 4K benchmarks and gameplay on here and see what it can do. First off, I ran 3D Mark Port Royal, the ray tracing benchmark. I've run this benchmark a lot of times on a lot of different cards, and this absolutely blew my mind to see it running at over 100 frames per second on the RTX 4090. And it came in with the highest score I've ever gotten on this by a mile, over 25,000 points. Next I ran Forza Horizon 5, and this is at 4K on the Extreme preset, And the 4090 was absolutely tearing it up in this game. If you look at the overlay, you'll see that we're actually CPU limited and we're not getting 100% of what this card could really do. I don't know if a 13th gen chip could fully utilize it, but even though we're not getting the full usage, you can see we're getting over 120, 130 frames per second basically all the time. And that's just a huge leap up from previous generation cards. There's probably even room here if you wanted to run it on extreme with the anti-aliasing cranked up to ×4, that would probably also be doable. But you'll see here on the results screen that we came in with an average of 141 frames per second, and that's at 4K extreme, so extremely impressive performance here in Forza from this card. Next I ran the benchmark for Horizon Zero Dawn. This is also at 4K, and this is on the Ultimate Quality preset. And we came in with an average FPS of 152 at 4K Ultimate Quality, so this is just an insane card. You obviously don't need a 4090 to play an MMO, but I went ahead and ran the Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker benchmark on here, and at the 4K maximum quality preset, we got an extremely high result with 32,000 points. So if you want to explore Eorzea in 4K or probably even 8K, the 4090 will definitely get the job done for you. Next I ran the Assassin's Creed Odyssey benchmark, and this is a really, whether it's because of the raw graphics or the coding of Ubisoft, this is a pretty tough game to run, and it pushes your CPU and your GPU a lot of times. And on the 4K Ultra preset, we were able to get 110 frame per second average. Next we have Red Dead Redemption 2, and I have almost all the settings all the way up. I moved the slider all the way over, and it moved everything up except for like particle lighting quality and fur or something, so I just went ahead and ran it on those mostly ultra settings. But at 4K, we got an average FPS of 121 frames per second. That 4K performance impressed me so much I had to try rendering this at 8K, so I bumped the resolution scaling up to 200%, but I moved this graphics slider down to balanced. So even at 8K, this was totally playable at a higher frame rate than the original Xbox and PlayStation release. That's really impressive. Next up is Watch Dogs Legion, and I ran this on the high preset. I turned the ray tracing up to ultra, and I turned headlight shadows up to 4 cars, whatever that does, and DLSS on quality. This has some ray tracing effects, and it's another pretty difficult game to run. And you'll see here in the results that we managed an average FPS of 84, which that's not over 100, but it's still really impressive considering this is at 4K with ray tracing and everything turned on. And finally, we gotta take a look at Cyberpunk. It's probably still the most graphically demanding game that's out. And running on the 4K Ultra RT preset with DLSS quality, we got an average FPS of 71. The minimum FPS only dipped down to 53, making this a really playable frame rate. And on 4K Ultra RT with the DLSS on quality, it looks absolutely amazing. The DLSS 3 update for Cyberpunk is on the way, but it's not out yet, so I can't test it right now. These results were really impressive though, and I might end up dipping back into Night City to do a playthrough on this card. Because of the price tag, really any RTX 4090 is going to be for enthusiasts and people who can use it for work. For gaming, really anything less than a 4K high refresh monitor is basically a no-go for this card. Even at 1440p, you're going to be leaving a lot of performance on the table, and you'll be paying for really more card than you can use. If you are in the market for an RTX 4090, while the Founders Edition is hard to beat based on the value, based strictly on pricing, paying for the upgrade to an AIB card like this may be worth it if you want features like dual BIOS switch, bigger heatsink, and more RGB. The difference is less than 10% of the price of the card, so it's not as bad of a deal as it would be on the lower tier cards where paying for the upcharge for an AIB card is pushing you close to getting the next tier up in a Founders Edition. So at the end of the day, this Gigabyte RTX 4090 Gaming OC is a badass card. It packs in some premium features, and it carries a top tier price tag to match its top tier performance. Thank you for watching along. I hope this video was helpful or at least entertaining. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.